Namaskar. I am Dr. Vishal Bhadani, Director at the International Center for Applied Gandhian Studies in Lok Bharti Sanosra, which is an autonomous institute affiliated to Maharaja Krishna Kumar Singh Ji Bhavnagar University, Bhavnagar in the state of Gujarat. At the very outset, let me thank Professor Jagdish Joshi, Director HRDC Gujarat University, for his outstanding work at the center. This center is unique with respect to many of its initiatives. In fact, all of us are using online platforms, digital gadgets and e-learning pedagogies these days. That is to say post-COVID days. But HRDC Gujarat University is a kind of avant-garde wherein they have been the first among those who have implemented e-learning, online refresher courses in the country. So with this note, let us begin today's session. Today I would like to share my views on towards imparting value education at tertiary level. When we say value education, most of the time what comes to our mind is moral science at the school level. We often feel, and rightly so, that developing character, developing ethics and moral values is particularly related to children and their school education. However, there are various dimensions to value education. So this session is divided into two parts. In the first part, we will try to understand this whole issue of imparting value education in tertiary education, because here so many things are changed, particularly the age of the students, pedagogies, expectations from the university and society. A range of aspects are completely unique than their counterparts in the school. So the first thing that comes to our mind is what is the single most important aim of higher education? Why do we have universities at the first place? It reminds me of Jacques Derrida, one of the best philosophers of the previous century, who said in his interview that if I am to set up a university in the Europe, I would lecture for 100 years on what is a university in entire Europe. Now, why did he say so? And remember, we are talking about Europe that has given us Oxford, Cambridge and other universities. He said so because he was very clear about the single most important aim of higher education. And that is, higher education institutes are supposed to generate new knowledge. That's it. These days we are combining employability with higher education. I believe these are two separate things. The chief role of a university is to generate new knowledge, and chief role of the state is to provide employability. Right? If they intervene somewhere, it is a bonus. But the primary aim of higher education, to my limited understanding, is to generate new knowledge. Now, when we say new knowledge, what kind of new knowledge? Because we have seen that knowledge per se, knowledge in itself, is neutral. It is neither good or bad. It solely depends on the operators, on the managers of the knowledge, whether to use for the positive reasons or the ill reasons. It is absolutely in the control of these knowledge managers to use science either for making nuclear weapons or nuclear power stations. It is here that values come into picture. It is here that we must focus on these dimensions of education as well. Otherwise, more and more scientific discoveries are heading towards disaster. Not only for a country or a community, but entire human race. So with this little background in mind, we should understand the whole idea of the need for value education. These days what we witness is staggering. हम क्या देख रहे हैं इस दौर में? हम ये देख रहे हैं कि colleges and universities have become almost war zones or at least conflict zones. These conflict zones are results of four things. Number one, changing dynamics of national and international politics. Now, universities have become the hub for instigating, provoking or channelizing certain political ideologies. That's reason number one why universities and colleges have become conflict zones. Reason number two is increased competition for students and funding. Several universities are competing against one another for drawing students, for canvassing students, and of course for their national and international funding. And we know that wherever there is competition, there is inevitable presence of jealousy and subtle forms of violence, subtle forms of unethical and immoral practices. Third is challenges arising from globalization. When globalization started, it dates back when Alexander the Great set out to win the world and accommodate all the nations into one gigantic empire. Till this date, we have been celebrating globalizations for a number of positive reasons. It makes the entire world a small village. There is great connectivity, sharing of resources. However, there are evident data suggests that globalization has caused more problems in terms of university education. For example, these days STEM education is in vogue. Like everybody is pressurizing children to opt for STEM education. Now, as we know that STEM education is really important, like we cannot move a step forward without STEM education. But underestimating, undermining humanities as a child of a lesser god is a serious concern, because humanities prepare good citizens. Humanities inculcate values among children. So this compartmentalized way of looking at education, either science or technology or humanity, is a matter of concern. Knowledge at the end of the day is one organic entity. All these disciplines, streams and subjects are but ways of approaching that knowledge. So globalization encourages narrow specialization, and that's a problem. Fourth reason why universities and colleges have become conflict zone is the rapid evolution of technology. And by technology, I mean disruptive technologies. There's a massive participation of people's opinion in policy making and decision making regarding education. Every third person you meet is an expert in education on social media. This is what we should be doing, this is what we should not be doing, and stuff like that. So national and international politics, increased competition, problems caused by globalization and technology, all these four things have made our higher education institutes conflict zones. Now these problems have been caused because some people are not practicing certain values. And from here we are digging deeper into how to approach this whole notion of imparting value education in tertiary education. What are these values that people are not focusing and practicing, and as the ramification of those practices we have conflicts, we have violence, we have a kind of unrest in the society. So people are not practicing integrity and fairness in all walks of life, be it finance, be it relationships, be it education, be it politics. Wherever people feel that I am being neglected or I am being discriminated due to X persons not practicing fairness and integrity, I will feel like depressed, and a depressed person can cause lot of turbulence in the society. Second thing that some people are not practicing as a virtue is equity and equality. Now, providing equal opportunities is one thing, but ensuring equity, ensuring need-based opportunity is totally different thing. Particularly in remote areas when casteism and feudalism is very active in India, equity and equality are sacrificed in a big way. A huge mass of talented students suffer because of this mentality. Third thing that some people are not practicing as a humanitarian value is social responsibility and community services. You would agree with me that we have excellent intellectual capacity in this country. We have excellent institutes, our premier institutes are there. But somehow the feeling that we get is these organizations are islands of excellence. They are excellent but island. So unless they practice their social responsibility and community service, students do not realize the optimum value of education. For them, education remains just a matter of passing examinations, getting degree and remain unemployed. There is this great disconnect between what I learn and what I live. So that's where we need to mark dent through value education. Fourth thing that some people are not practicing, which is causing a lot of problem in society and education, is diversity, pluralism and inclusiveness. If you ask your students what this country stands for, I am sure they will speak up one of these words. But in practice, somehow, in recent years, we have chosen a different path, and that path is very exclusivist, wherein we believe in excluding people. Now, that's not the core expertise of this country. This country thrives on diversity, inclusion and pluralism. Because in all these three words, the common thread is acceptance. I should be ready to accept people who are different than me, people who hold different opinions and faith systems than I do. Only then I can demonstrate all the Indian values that I stand for. Now, the problem with us is whenever we see decline and deterioration of moral values in the societies, we try to embed them into curriculum. And in curriculum also, our modalities, our modus operandi remains same as the one we use for teaching other subjects. I believe that's not how value education is imparted or should be imparted. So with this understanding, let's go back to the original aim of the university. We discussed that the sole aim of a university or a premier institute of higher education is to generate new knowledge. Then what could be the mission? I believe the mission of education is not to create rats for the race, but to create empathetic intellectuals. I would like to stress this word, empathetic intellectuals. Only intellectuals are also dangerous, because we have seen all the major problems that we see around our life, society and world have been caused by intellectuals. Be it terrorism, be it global warming, be it corruption, all the major problems invariably are rooted into behavior and choices of intellectuals. That is why we need intellectuals who are empathetic as well. Hence, we need intellectuals who are empathetic, who can practice integrity, fairness, diversity, pluralism, equity, equality, and community service alike. Now the question is, are universities preparing such empathetic intellectuals? And how do we know? How do we know that universities are actually working towards that goal? The simple strategy that I have used is to study the vision statements of some national and international universities and premier institutes. Let's look at them one by one. What these vision statements tell us about the overall goal of the university. So, first is Cambridge University. Its mission statement reads something like this. The mission of the University of Cambridge is to contribute to society through the pursuit of education, learning, and research at the highest international level of excellence. So I believe the two things are key in this statement. One is the whole priority on the idea of contribution. So the university is aware that its education, research and all other learning practices are towards contribution for the society, and their ideal is to achieve the best of the international practices. Let's look at another university, and that is Oxford. What does Oxford say? Our aim is to provide our staff and students with state-of-the-art facilities within an inspiring and historic setting, to improve opportunities for interdisciplinary working, and to do all of these while minimizing our environmental impact. So as we can see that 90% of this statement is very limited. Like they want to provide facilities to the students and staff and maintain their historic identity. But the 10% is more important, wherein they are aware about their environmental impact. This is where they are reflecting one of the core values of higher education, right? Now let's look at some of the Indian institutes. So IIT Bombay's vision statement reads like this: to be a leading global technology university that provides a transformative education to create leaders and innovators and generates new knowledge for society and industry. Again, here the aspiration is to be the best, but the key word that I find interesting is to generate new knowledge. So it is where its mission maps with what an ideal university should be doing. Let's look at IIM Lucknow. It says that our aim is to be a preeminent center of excellence, generating and imparting knowledge in management and providing socially conscious and globally relevant thought leadership. As you could notice very well, couple of words: socially conscious and globally relevant thought leaders. So they not only want to focus on building global intellectual capacity in the field of management, of course, but also socially conscious. So IIM Lucknow also reflects its awareness for what the institute should be doing. Let's look at what IISc Bangalore, Indian Institute of Science Bangalore says. It says, to be among the world's foremost academic institutions through the pursuit of excellence in research and promotion of innovation by offering world-class education to train future leaders in science and technology, and by applying science and technology breakthroughs for India's wealth creation and social welfare. I think the whole chain of words and phrases lead to these two things: increasing India's wealth and social welfare. Again, they are very clear that all the knowledge, all the excellence that they are aspiring for is towards these social welfare activities. JNU, right? We should also look at what JNU stands for and its spirit, because JNU has given us excellent academicians and excellent research works. JNU says, we at JNU believe in excellence with social responsibility and commitment, and wish to become a benchmark for Indian universities. Again, like other premier Indian institutes, JNU also focuses on social responsibility, and whenever the word social comes, either with commitment, welfare or responsibility, the underlying current is social values. Jamia Millia Islamia, again one of the best universities of the country, its mission statement says that we wish to strive to foster the goals of building a secular and modern system of integrated education for sustainable development of society and better future for all. So many interesting words, so many nice words that reflect that university focuses on nurturing values, and it is so open in terms of possibilities that it wishes better future for all. Last but not the least, let's look at the vision statement of Gujarat Vidyapit, a university founded by Mahatma Gandhi. It says, to prepare through education workers with character, ability, culture and conscientiousness necessary for the conduct of movements connected with the regeneration of the country in accordance with ideals given by Mahatma Gandhi. So we have taken a progressive journey towards well education. So by the time we reach to Gujarat Vidyapit, we realize that here the focus is completely on character building, and through character building, nation building. So are the vision statements of most of the Indian universities, be it state universities or central universities or autonomous institutes and other colleges. Now, if that is so, if universities are so clear about their role in terms of value education, are we seeing it reflected in actual practices? Well, I beg to say that we are unable to see actual imparting value education at tertiary level. Why? Because still there is a great debate among the academicians on whether we should impart value education at tertiary level, or we should only focus on equipping our students with disciplinary expertise, making them experts in respective subjects. All of you are aware of one of the finest writers of the world called Stanley Fish. He has written a book called Save the World on Your Own Time in 2008. In that book, he argues that university teachers should not be teaching moral values to students. And he says, faculty members should not educate students in values, but should focus on instructing them in methodologies of the disciplines. Okay, so that is one side of the argument, and they have their valid reasons also, because the onus of preparing students' character is not the prime responsibility of the university. Actually, it is a shared responsibilities among many stakeholders of the society: students' families, immediate social ambience, community, linguistic background, religious faiths, so on and so forth. So that is one opinion that they are saying. And in addition to that, what we see here is that it is a kind of either or situation, that either you can build students' character or you can prepare their domain knowledge expertise. Max Weber in 1946 said something like this. He argued for separation of knowledge and morality. He insisted that, and I quote, values are not scientific and cannot be defended via reason. I repeat, values are not scientific and cannot be defended via reason. Now on face value, we are tempted to agree with Weber, because what is right for me can be absolutely wrong for you, and vice versa. If situation is this sloppy and dicey, how can we decide what moral values are, what these virtues stand for? And if we cannot decide the nature of these moral values, how can we impart them among our students? That's a valid argument actually. There is another research which is titled as The Making of the Modern University, published as a book with the same title in 1996 by Julia Rubin, and she says that American higher education has increasingly moved towards this separation of knowledge and morality. Of late, we have realized that American academia has a massive influence on the academics of the entire globe. So when we are citing a research from America, we should believe that sooner or later we will have the same fate here in India as well. Besides, there is a striking study conducted in 2005 wherein they interviewed and surveyed faculty members on whether faculty members should be imparting values in university students, college students or no. The result is very staggering. Only a tiny fraction of faculty members viewed enhance students' self-understanding, develop moral characters, develop personal values as very important and essential. Now this is also quite revealing, because if teachers are not convinced about the fact that they should be doing something, they would never do it. No matter what policies are there, no matter what curricula says, no matter what guidelines say. So the first and the foremost thing is teachers should be convinced. But why should teachers be convinced? That is also an interesting area to explore, because there is another dimension we should not be ignoring. This dimension is the religious dimension. Because most of the values that we practice today, or values that we believe in, have their roots in religious belief systems. At times, certain religious belief systems propagate values that are absolutely taboos, or in fact seen in other religious faiths. In this case, in classroom with heterogeneity, in a classroom with students from so many backgrounds, teaching values could be a daunting task. because teacher can be put to the serious task of passing any kind of value judgments on any of the practices. And that's why maybe many teachers refrain themselves from teaching values. On the other hand, we should be looking at what students want. We should also have research telling us whether our students require this value education. If you ask your colleagues, your friends, and some students, superficially the answer is no, we should not be talking about value education. Let's focus on the subjects, disciplines, employability, and let's get the job. But it's not as simple and as true as it appears. There is this report from Higher Education Research Institute which says an otherwise story. It says that students are searching for meaning and purpose in life, and they discuss meaning of life with friends. Now, what does this mean? It means that along with studies, students also crave something else. So you might have realized that during our lectures, whenever we digress a bit and whenever we talk about something other than syllabus, students are like very curious. They get hooked to whatever we are saying, and in fact they demand such stories, such anecdotes, such data, or such discussions. Why does that happen? It happens because their internal craving is to understand their own purpose of life. There is another book called Making the Most of College, which was published in 2001, and it says, most common hope expressed by students when they embark on college life is that it will somehow change them as persons. Now that word is important, persons. How can you bring about any change as persons? Because the very definition of a person includes his or her social identity, emotional identity, intellectual identity, spiritual identity, so on and so forth. If you take into account all these identities, then definitely the role of higher education expands itself from imparting just disciplinary knowledge to imparting value education as well. So what we can deduce from these two strikingly extreme viewpoints: one, faculties believing that our job is only to provide subject knowledge, and students seeking purpose of life. So how do we reconcile these two extremes? What should we do? That's a question worth pondering. On the one hand, we have this compartmentalized approach of looking at education. We feel that our job is to provide subject knowledge via curricular activities, and students can develop their morale, their character through extracurricular and co-curricular activities. However, when we think critically, when we think rationally, is it as simple as it appears? Are knowledge and character really separate? That's the question. This very famous Mark Twain, in his book Exiles from Eden in 1993, said something very interesting. He said, and I quote, "Many intellectual pursuits presuppose virtues of character, and so when the two often develop in tandem." It is something like this, that try to remember your bright students. Who are these bright students? Bright students are those students who complete all the assignments on time, who come reading before the lecture, who perform excellently in their projects. When they deliver presentations, their articulation is very sound. Now when you look at the processes of these bright students, they are sacrificing a lot of fun, that their other friends are having. They are pushing themselves hard, they are highly focused. Aren't these values that help them achieve academic excellence? I'm sure the whole tradition of knowledge and character in the history of philosophy has been seamlessly interwoven. For example, Socrates did not separate reason and morality but insisted that we must be able to give rational account of moral decisions. This is very important. Whenever there is any moral decision is to be made, we should be looking at the science of it. There are some wonderful lectures on Harvard on what is justice, and they try to explore the idea of justice in individual's life, in our social life, in global life from hardcore scientific perspective. There are research available on the relationship between value education and cognitive science. So there are definite neurons working for moral education. So it means that character and knowledge are not as separated as they appear. Because we have seen that when brighter students renounce their pleasures, they are practicing some of the beautiful virtues and values. For a higher value is both character, virtue and let us try to understand this in the context of classroom discussion. Now in classroom discussion, you would have observed that there are students who listen to other students very carefully, right? Without weighing their opinions, without imposing themselves on others. Now that's a great value to be learned as an individual, because when you listen to somebody carefully, you develop clarity, you develop unbiased mindset, and you also develop a non-judgmental worldview, which is so required, which is so badly required today. Second is, there are students who encourage effectively participation of others to exhibit their intellectual hospitality. What is intellectual hospitality? Intellectual hospitality is to encourage other students to participate in the discourse. Often we have seen that there are faculty members who would only teach to 5 brighter students in the classroom. The rest of them are haywired. So we must be working on our intellectual hospitality and encourage them, because encouragement is a great tool. It's in fact a great value to motivate students. Third thing that we observe in our classroom discussion is how to challenge interlocutors. Interlocutors are those students who are constantly intervening flow of argument. So we must be challenging them, and challenging in such a way that their subtle ego is not hurt, the subtle ego is not hampered in any which way. Now that's an art in itself, that's a value, great value. So when students practice all these values, when they listen to others carefully, when they encourage their friends, and when they challenge those interlocutors, they practice great value, and this value helps them achieve academic excellence as well. So by and large, intellectual values and ethical virtues are necessary conditions for generating meaningful discourse at tertiary level. We discussed that the aim of higher education, the aim of tertiary education is to create empathetic intellectuals. Now, how can we create that? The method to create empathetic intellectuals is to generate meaningful discourse in the classroom, on the campus, during the conferences, and in general air of the campus, in general air of the university, this meaningful discourse has to happen. What will happen after this meaningful discourse? After this meaningful discourse, we will be able to see fairness, integrity, diversity, right, inclusion, equity, equality, and all those universal values that we want to see in the society. Our students are the great opinion makers in the society, because even today a very minuscule minority in India attains higher education. So it becomes in that sense our duty to impart these values and virtues among the students so that they would become better global citizens. We will see you in the next part of this lecture, wherein we will be discussing on exactly what kinds of values should we focus on. Thank you so much.